My name is Athena and today I'm going to be doing the rapid fire book tag. I was tagged to do this by the Sleepy Reader, so thank you very much for tagging me. And I'll leave a link to her video down below, as well as a link to the video of the original creator, Girl Reading. So I'll leave links to those videos below. Interestingly, I actually filmed the rapid fire book tag around the same time that I started my channel, last July 2018, but I kept it as a spare video because I had enough videos at the time and I wasn't tagged by anyone or anything, but I just liked the tag and I never ended up posting it because I had enough videos, and there were other videos I was more proud of. And then I was tagged recently by the Sleepy Reader, so I thought, well, I'll refilm it because I think I am more comfortable with the camera now than I was 8 months ago. So it's probably not going to be very quick because I like to ramble and explain myself, but we will see. The first question is ebook or physical book, and I much prefer physical books for a variety of reasons. I do have a Kindle, an e-reader, and I use it occasionally, but I mostly use it to read books that are not available as a paper book. For example, there are a couple of authors that I really like that mostly publish ebooks, or whose physical books are really hard to get here. I also like to read short stories and novellas on my Kindle, but yeah, I mostly prefer physical books. Next question is paperback or hardback, and for me that would have to be a paperback. I really do not like dust jackets. I do like it when a book doesn't have a dust jacket, when, let's say, the cover is just on the cover of the book and not on a flappy bit of paper. I don't like reading with the dust jacket on, but without it, it looks like crap. So I do really, I do read the book with the dust jacket on, but yeah, I much prefer paperbacks. However, lately I have gotten into buying a bit more hardcovers. I really don't like it when books are too big, so some hardcovers, especially of, for example, fantasy series, they are like really big and tall. I find those really awkward to hold, but lately, I don't know, the past, like, I'm not even sure, but maybe year or half year or so, I've been buying more hardcover books, but then the ones that are like more medium size. I guess that would more be like contemporary young adults, those kind of sizes, because I really wanted to read those newer releases. And anyway, my preference is paperbacks, and I have more paperbacks than any other format. Online or in-store shopping, for me that really depends. I buy a lot of books online, mostly from a Dutch web shop, pretty in the Netherlands famous one. I also like to buy used books sometimes. So there is a book fair that I like to go to about once a year. I used to go more often, but yeah, once a year nowadays. And now those books are not used, but I like to buy books there. I also like to buy books in charity shops and second-hand shops. I also like to go to library sales. I don't actually go into actual bookshops a lot, because a lot of the books I like to read are hard to find, because I like to read books in English. So for most of the English books I buy, I usually buy those. I order them online. And for most Dutch books, those usually come from library sales or second-hand bookshops or charity shops, or book fair. And on book fairs, I buy both English and Dutch books. There's this one book fair in the Netherlands called Het Boekenfestijn, and I like to go there. And they offer books at discounted prices, usually not like the newest books, but like slightly older books that have maybe like a mark or something like that on them. Sometimes they're mostly in books that bookshops can't sell anymore, so then they sell them at a discount. So yeah, I guess that'd be my answer. Trilogy or series? I would have to say series because, well, technically I see a series as anything that's more than one book. So a duology is a series, a trilogy is a series, but also whatever a series is called with 4 books, quadrilogy or something. I'm not sure what that's called. Now, if we assume for this question that trilogy is not a series, because otherwise it's an obvious answer, then I would still have to say series. I read quite a lot of books that are part of, for example, children's book series that have not one continuing story but involve the same characters. And so I like to read a lot of those, so I'd have to say series. I don't read that many trilogies nowadays, so heroes or villains? For me, that definitely have to be heroes. Yeah. I know there are people who prefer villains. I'm all for the heroes. When I used to play video games or something like that, I would always pick like the good answers. If you play like a role-playing game or something, I'm not the evil ones. So that's just me. A book that you recommend to everyone? Oh, I didn't think about this before I started filming. I have no idea what book I answered the other time that I filmed this. I don't know that there's a book I would recommend to everyone, because I feel like everyone's reading tastes are different, and so I would rather recommend a book to when I know a bit about somebody's tastes, if that makes sense. I think that's the same answer I gave many months ago, actually. Recommend an underrated book. Oh, I don't really know. For one, I don't really keep tabs on what books are like underrated and not, and when is something underrated and when it isn't. If you go by Goodreads, then a lot of the more Dutch children's books I read don't have a lot of ratings on Goodreads. So I don't really know on top of my head, because I didn't think about this question beforehand. The last book you finished? That was An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. I finished that yesterday. The last book you bought? Well, the last book I received in the post, so to speak, was Aya, The Love in Yob City, Aya Omnibus 2, by Marguerite Abouet and Clément Houberry. Weirdest thing you use for a bookmark? That would be another book. I usually use actual bookmarks. On occasion I have used like a receipt or another kind of piece of paper. But yeah, the weirdest thing would have to be another book. Used books, yes or no? Yes, definitely yes. I get a portion of my books used, and that is much cheaper, so I like that. It's also easier to find like older books that way. For example, like children's books that are older, like from the 90s, let's say, from my childhood. I find them sometimes at library sales or something like that, and it's, yeah. Top 3 favorite genres? Well, the number 1 is definitely contemporary fiction. Number 2 used to be fantasy. I'm not reading it as much nowadays. And number 3 used to be science fiction. I'm also not reading as much of that nowadays. So I am reading more memoirs and more graphic novels, and I don't know, an age ranges. I read like children's books, young adult and adult books, so. But I'm sure my answer for this was slightly different when I recorded the video initially. Borrow or buy? I do both. So I like to borrow books from my local library, But there are a lot of books my library doesn't have. Dutch books wise, they have a lot. And so, especially Dutch children's books, I often loan them from the library. But there are a lot of English books in English, that haven't been translated into Dutch, that my library doesn't have. Because they only have a small selection, well, smaller selection of books in English. So I tend to buy a lot of these books in English that haven't been translated new, because also secondhand that you don't really find them. So that's kind of how that works. And of course, these English books that haven't been translated, a lot of that I hear about from BookTube, and also from friends on a forum. So I like both. Long or short books? I used to really like long books. Lately I am more, into short or medium length books. I tend to read those more. So I guess if I had to pick between the two of us, a long or short, I would pick short. But it really depends on the book. And there are a lot of long books that I love. But yeah, lately I'm gravitating more towards short or medium length books. And I consider a long book personally over 500 pages, and a short book under 250 pages, and a medium book in between those. Long or short chapters? Short, definitely. I find that much easier to concentrate on. Name 3 books off the top of your head. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. And The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Books that make you laugh or cry. I like both, actually. I have read some funny books. I have also cried from some books that were quite sad. Most of the time I don't do either one of these things. Like, most of the books I read are not particularly extremely funny or like really sad enough that they make me cry, because not every sad book makes me cry, if that makes sense. Anyway, both. Our world or fiction world. When it comes to fantasy, I like high fantasy, so a new world, over urban fantasy, which is like our world, but then like some magical element like werewolves, just to name something. So when it comes to fantasy, if there are fantastical elements, then I prefer a whole new fictional world. But I really like reading stories that take place in our world that are more realistic. I like contemporary fiction. So yeah. Audiobooks, yes or no? Not for me personally. It's much harder for me to concentrate on like audio input than like reading words on a page. I also can't speed it up, because that is even harder for my brain to concentrate on for a longer amount of time. So for me, I definitely have to read the words rather than hearing them. But I do think audiobooks are a great thing. I do think they are reading, and I think it is excellent for all those people out there who listen to audiobooks. So yeah. Do you ever judge a book by its cover? I do think the cover plays an important part in whether I'll gravitate towards a book. If a book has a cover that appeals to me in some way, I'm more likely to pick it up. But I do always read the synopsis, unless the book is like by an author I know I like a lot and I don't have that book yet and I want all of their books. But other than that, I always read the synopsis, and I have also ordered books where you can see a picture of the cover. But yeah, the cover is definitely important to me. Like on ebook, not so much, but for physical books, it does play a small a part in it. Book to movie or book to TV. This really depends on the book, in my opinion. Some books are more suited to TV series and some books are more suited to movies. If you're asking me personally, my preference, then I would say book the TV series, because TV series episodes tend to be shorter than a movie. They tend to be like, let's say 45 minutes or an hour or 20 minutes, but like usually not longer than an hour. And for me, it is hard to concentrate on something for a long amount of time. I don't watch a whole lot of movies, to be honest. I do want to watch a whole lot of movies, but I find it just hard to sit through like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour long movie. That is difficult for me. So I would prefer a TV series where I can just like watch one 45-minute episode in a day, and then so I can like, hello. Yeah, baby. Excuse the laundry in the background. A movie or TV show that you prefer to its book? For me, that would have to be The Time Machine, and then the 2002 film adaptation. Sorry, my nose is always itchy. I really like this movie. I've seen it several times, and I read the book, I think a few years ago, the original classic by H.G. Wells, and I was a bit disappointed in that the story was quite different from the book. So that would be my answer. And the last question is series or standalone, and for me that would have to be standalone. I do read a lot of books from series, although if you were to divide it into like series that have one overarching story versus series where it's the same characters but a different story, like these children's book series that I talked about earlier, then I think I read more series with like more standalone stories, if that makes sense. But I prefer standalones. I read a lot of standalones also. I'm always hesitant to get into a new series and then you have to continue it, and then I can't remember what happened in the earlier book, and so yeah, standalone. That was the tag. I hope I didn't ramble on for too long. We'll have to see how much this footage comes down to after editing. I don't know who hasn't done this tag, because this is a relatively older tag and I have seen lots of people do it. So if you're subscribed to me and you haven't done it, feel free to do it. But I think a lot of the people that I've subscribed to have done it, I think, that I can remember. So I don't think I'm going to tag anyone. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!